nice. And I just want to get a feeling for, I want to put all of this together for a split second. Just get an idea that if everything is going to fit the way I expect it will. Never fits the way you expect it will. Now it's almost like right now we're arranging little dollhouse furniture type of things. Now see, this color green is just a little bit different. There's that dashboard. And I can get a little look at. And this is what I do constantly, is just do a little mock-up to see if everything kind of fits. Looks a little bit different than when we first started. Starting to look like I had envisioned anyway. And our little brake lever, the epoxy dried. Doing this with dyed epoxy is really a nice way to get a nice finish on it. It's almost impossible to get nice finishes on these little parts. This is a good little tip though. That little lever in there, that kind of worked out the way I wanted to. One more little detail I want to make of it. One of the tricks is there's not much better material that I know of than 64th plywood when it's laminated. And what I want to do is I want to make a little schematic of the shape that I want, oversize, and then I want to cut out 4 or 5 laminations, cross the grain, and that gives you a nice material to work in little details with. It needs almost no pre-finishing, usually works well right away. Most important thing when laminating up little scraps of plywood, you want the grain going, again, I keep saying it over and over again, but now I have a piece that I can take over to the grindstone, the Dremel tool, I can cut, shape, file, and it's for all purposes pre-finished. Once I sand it down, it'll just need a coat of paint and it's ready to go. And these old Bud McKnight sanding sticks seem to make a handy way. I cut that groove in with a little parting wheel. And this, of course, is trying to simulate a little quadrant type of control you would find on a World War II plane. The thing I want to do is epoxy that little headrest on the seat, and I can start laying out just exactly how I want to get the seat mounted into the cockpit itself. And the reason I like to use drops of epoxy, because once we seal this up we can never go back in and get it out again, and epoxy seems to hold well to the paint. All that epoxy is drying, I can do a little ink detailing, do some riveting on the yoke and some of the other little parts. I'm going to start to do a line of riveting right around the edge here. Just try to get it a little more prototypical if I can. And really you can just be detailing and rivet heading as long as you like, is whatever seems to work to make it look a little more realistic. Our little quadrant now, we're just waiting for the epoxy to dry, and I can make the knob that goes in the quadrant. The little quadrant worked out pretty nice. This is all done with stuff you normally would have in a normal shop. The only thing that it's just time consuming doing this and having some little ideas on how to make some of these little parts, these little handles and switches. But I don't think it's out of anybody's skill range. Just some of the little patterns you can put in, obviously all white rivets. White rivets with a black dot in them. Black dot. I like to try to vary it as much as possible. I don't like to make it all exactly the same. It just looks too redundant that way. I think it looks more realistic, and a real airplane is all different size rivets. They're not all the same. Okay, now the next step is I want to put a small drop of epoxy on the bottom of the seat and up on this bridge work that goes on the top, so this is all interconnected. I even put in that little wheel with the little bit of epoxy I had left over. Before I actually epoxy this in, I want to put the little I don't know what you call this, sun eyebrow on it. And of course the easiest way is tack it right in the middle and then work your way down. 64th plywood again. Now this is something I bought when I was doing the Spitfire. It's like cockpit combing. I want to see if I can use this. This kind of fits right on. Obviously it needs to be glued on. I want to see how this is going to look once it's in the... Again, they make this, it's commercial stuff they make for... Found this in a shop that specializes in RC and helicopters. I guess you could make your own out of thin tubing, but it adds a nice finished look. You know, the next thing, I need to make up a piece of 64th plywood edging for these both sides, just to cover up this balsa joint. And then I'll be ready to glue this in permanently. Okay, got these little 64th plywood edges, just waiting for the glue to cure out. And we'll be ready to install the dashboard permanently. Before I paint these, I wanted to get all of this detailing done, because what will happen is I'll be rubbing my hand on this while I'm painting. Cut the little notch out with a brand new XL blade for the yoke. Okay, now the last thing I want to do here in this session is I want to get the inside of the cockpit painted, the glass part. Again, I got that waiting to dry, and now what I want to do is get the inside. Remember, this is on the inside, but I want to leave the glue area all around the edge where it's going to get glued. So I got to kind of go back and forth and see where this is going to get glued. The idea is to get it so when you look into the cockpit, anything that you would still see in these ribs and things, that it's painted on the inside. You wouldn't see the filler or the paint that goes on the outside. So I want to make sure I keep that edge that I'll see from the outside. It's easy just to do this by hand. Now I left just enough around the edge where I can catch the epoxy without catching paint. Now what I'm trying to do is line up that I've covered all the areas that I normally would see once this is glued in. I think overall we got a pretty good representation, and I'm looking around for other little details I might want to put in here. Now using this, I got about a half hour left in this session. Using this little piece, I guess this was the piece of the nose, I had a little piece left over. What I want to do is, I want to make the equivalent of a little cushion. Now the real Spitfires, it looked like they had unpadded seats, and then they just threw a cushion over the top of it. It's hard to tell. The two books are totally in conflict with each other. We can make